I call these a destination religion, seeing religion as a destination. This is where I'm at or where I'm going. Or as a tool, religion helps me do things. It helps me deal with stress, helps me feel connected to people, things like that. And then the quest approach is what I want to focus on today. Before talking more about that, I thought I'd just share with you a few questionnaire items that people use to give you an idea of what the quest is about. So in your mind's eye, answer these questions, how much you would agree or disagree with these. As I grow and change, I expect my religion also to grow and change. Doubting is an important part of what it means to be religious. My life experiences have led me to rethink my religious convictions. Questions are far more central to my religious experience than our answers. So if you tended to agree with those, then you would probably score fairly high on this idea of religion as a quest. The core of it is that religion is an existential quest. And the person who takes this approach really is much more interested in the questions that life poses than in the answers people offer. They're open to their beliefs being challenged. They're not dogmatic. They see doubt in a positive way, in a positive light. They're not inclined to reduce the complexity of existential concerns. Now, of course, in reality, most people are a combination of these three approaches. It's very unusual that one person is just really extreme on one of these dimensions and not on the others at all. That just doesn't happen often. But I think it's interesting to consider what are the implications of viewing life and religion as a sort of quest. What does it mean to have a quest approach to religion? Let's see. So compared to the destination approach or the tool approach, those intrinsic or extrinsic orientations, the quest person has a tendency to actually feel a little more distress in their life. Sorry, it's true. The reality is that people like answers to things, and focusing on questions all the time can be unsettling. At the same time, the person who really emphasizes the questions, research finds, has a tendency towards forgiveness and helping. And those are pretty consistent trends in the research, unless a person is high on the quest orientation and is being asked or expected to forgive someone who's really intolerant. That doesn't go over well with the quest person. The quest is much more inclined towards tolerance. So in order to put some of these ideas in a context, I thought I would share with you a classic experiment that was done actually in 1973 by one of the researchers. I call him my academic grandpa. Dan Batson was one of the co-authors of this study. One of his students was Jim Fultz, and what do you know? He was my dissertation advisor. So they were interested in the idea of how religion might impact people's willingness to help someone. So what they did is they set up, they happened to be at a university where there was a seminary, and they asked seminary students to prepare one of two kinds of talks. One was about job prospects to people who are considering entering the seminary. The other was about the parable of the Good Samaritan. You may know the story. Basically, a guy's walking down the road, he gets mugged. A couple people from his town come upon him and they say, oh, I don't want to deal with this. And they cross the street so they don't have to interact with him. Someone from a competing town comes upon him and says, well, hey, let me help you out. Goes, takes him to get care, place to rest, some food. And the real message is, who was this person's real neighbor? the people ostensibly from his own town, or the person from the competing town. So they're presenting a talk about that story or a talk about jobs. They prepare their talk at one part of campus. They have to deliver it across campus. And along the way, they come upon someone who's just slumped against a building, kind of at a doorway, going, oh, not doing well. You see where this is going? I can tell by your smiles. So who is more likely to help? There's one factor that I haven't told you about yet, and that is how much time people had to get across campus. Some people had plenty of time, others, they had to hurry. Time was the big factor that influenced who was going to help her, which on the one hand is kind of a bummer, because if you think religion is going to help people do good things, you'd want that variable to enter into it. So when they looked at the data a little more closely, what they found was the people who were in this experiment had different religious orientations. Some were the tool approach, some were the destination approach, and some were the quest approach. And among the people who helped this man in the doorway, the people with the quest approach were actually less likely to help, which shocked the researchers. They thought, no, this can't be. But then they gave it a little more thought, and some additional research has been done since. This study was done in 1973, a long time ago. What they realized was that the people who have the quest orientation are more likely to help if the person wants the help, which is interesting. The quest orientation has this sense of respect for others. And the people who had the more destination approach, that was the dominant approach, they were more likely to help because that was their job. I need to help you. Helping you makes me feel better. From the destination approach. The quest approach, it's not about what makes me feel better, it's about what you need. Really kind of interesting when you think about it. So, lost my place, that always happens. So in terms of what it means to have a quest orientation towards religion, there's been a lot of research on this. As I mentioned, it's been decades since this idea came up. One factor I thought you'd be interested to know is that the quest orientation is associated with less prejudice, racial prejudice, sexual orientation prejudice. They're more open-minded, you could say. The quest approach is associated with self-esteem. People who are high on the quest orientation are more likely to have positive self-esteem. But they're not necessarily more likely to have a sense of meaning and purpose in life. That's where the destination approach comes. If you have the destination approach, you know what life is about. The quest approach is about questions. Gaining knowledge, perhaps, but not obtaining it necessarily. The quest approach is more likely to be associated with finding humor in response to life's daily hassles. That might be my favorite of the findings. I like to laugh. Well, my sense of humor is strange. What can I say? I think it's interesting that in response to the headaches that we all get in life, one approach is to find humor in it. I don't know, there's something nice about that. So this is just a taste of some of the research that people have found. One study I should mention, I will say, I looked through the database to see, has anyone done a study just comparing people of different denominations in terms of their general trends on these dimensions. I couldn't find a study that dealt with UUs. I did find one that was interesting, dealing with UUs in Australia, but it didn't really approach these orientations. But my dealings with UUs suggest to me that questions are valuable. The impact of your belief system, as evidenced by things like having a rainbow flag and all that that represents, those are important indicators that suggest to me that you all are questers. And so I looked to see one study that was interesting, tried to get at what makes a person more likely to be a quest person than not. And what they found was that it seems to be a sort of psychological predisposition that may always be there or may kind of emerge as life experiences accumulate. A combination of extroversion and intuition, of perceiving, of feeling, those kinds of qualities, according to that research, were part of making a person more inclined to be a quester. An interest in mysticism, which implies maybe less interest in institutions. So those are some interesting things about life as a quest person in terms of religion. I thought I'd conclude with just a thought from Voltaire. Judge people by their questions rather than their answers. That sort of resonated to me. And it's my hope that each of us embraces our questions and encourage others to embrace theirs.